What's going on, guys? How's it going? Justice here. I have some data here that I want to go over with you. In 2008, Elon Musk had both SpaceX and Tesla, had all of his money in both, and was weeks away from it going completely under. Okay? 2008, we all know what that time was like. It was so bad, he had to actually borrow money from friends. Let me go to another one. Steve Jobs, circa 1985. All right? He's forced out of Apple, this massive company that he built with amazing computers. And after he gets fired by the board, he decides to start a company called Next. That company Next, along with, he took a huge bet, taking $10 million of his own funds and pouring it into a small company that we now know as Pixar. Now, by 1992, both companies were close to failure, and one of them actually did. That's Next. Okay? Let me go over three more. Sam Walton, you might know him, founder of Walmart. You might not know this about him, but before there was Walmart, he had another store. Now, on that store in the 1950s, that store was like one of the best performing retail stores in the region. It's doing awesome. But here's a mistake. He signed a non-renewal lease, which at that time meant that the landlord could actually seize it, could seize the business. And he did. And to make matters worse, he also just gave that store to his son. Sam Walton was kicked out. All right? Two more. You might know this guy, Phil Knight, circa 1970, founder of Nike, okay? He was constantly overextended because I don't know if you know, but before Nike, there was what we call Blue Ribbon. Blue Ribbon turned into Nike. Now, he was constantly overextended on his loans, on his line of credit, to the point where the bank actually cut him off and threatened to call him on his loans, meaning you need to pay everything you owe to us right now, which he definitely didn't have, okay? So again, almost failed. Now, I don't know if you know this person, I'm not being sarcastic, Howard Schultz, not the founder of Starbucks. He actually didn't found it. He actually worked for Starbucks, okay? And around 1985, he quit Starbucks to start a new cafe, Italian concept cafe, kind of espresso type store. All right, real cool. Now, guess how many investors he reached out to for investments? 200. And 200 investors said no. So what did he do? He took $3.8 million. He bought Starbucks that had 6 stores at the time for $3.8 million, which, just so you know, he says that if it hadn't worked, if those stores hadn't turned around and turned into what we know now, he would have been financially devastated. He's now a billionaire. In fact, every single one of the people that I just shared with you are billionaires. And these are just 5 founders that I found whose names I felt like you would recognize. And what do they all have in common? One, they all failed at something. They're all failing, or they were on the edge of a massive failure, but they still took risk. So today, what I want to talk about with you is the crossroads between fear, failure, and faith. Now, you guys might be saying, well, none of these guys are Christians or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm just saying they had radical faith. And I believe that most of us, and this is me included, we will take risk, we will fail, and then we will tell ourselves this story that it just wasn't meant to be. And what I think is missing from a lot of us is that when we risk and fail, we let our conviction, we let it ride along with that failure. Instead of saying, what did I learn? What is this? Am I still convicted about this thing? There's something inside of what I was building that's actually going to turn into something. Now, wherever you lie on how you feel about X, the platform, the social media, it used to be called Twitter, which is why you probably still hear people say Twitter or a tweet went out, okay? Some of you young people might not understand that, but it was Twitter. Now, did you know that before Twitter was what it was an idea that got invested in that was just like a podcast type platform type thing that eventually turned into Twitter. See, it could have failed, but they pivoted. And they just doubled down. And so my hope for you and what I want for you to take from this is, what do you have conviction on? What is the thing that you believe more than anything when it comes to business? Or you can even take it outside of business, but let's just stay in the business lane right now. If you're in business right now, what is the thing that you feel in your gut to be true? And now my next question is, what are you willing to bet on that? I'm not here telling you to be irresponsible with your finances, but I realize that the people that I see that I'm like, man, if I could be 5% as good as they are, I will be radically successful. The thing that I over and over again is taking conscious risk that is not stupid, but it's based on a conviction that maybe they just cannot explain. Let me just talk to you through this, okay? So Steve Jobs, he takes $10 million invested in Pixar. No one knew what that was. It was built on this technology that hadn't been used. We all remember watching Toy Story for the first time. We couldn't have seen that coming. Now, before Pixar, there's just a ton of money being burned, right? Before Toy Story, I should say, there's just a ton of money being burned on designers, on artists, on technology that just never got used, that will never see the light of day. But they invested and they kept going. At some point, he's looking at his capital and going, I'm watching it just burn. At what point do they say, keep going? Do you know what I'm talking about? There's some point where you just go, I know this is going to be true. I know this is going to work out, but I've got nothing to show that it will. That's faith. It's believing in something with almost no evidence, but knowing that it's going to be true. And look, there is a graveyard of people that have that did it and it didn't work out. But if you're in entrepreneurship, you come into this knowing that. You know the risks of business. It can be something completely out of your control that takes you out. How many restaurant owners during COVID had this amazing business that just went away? It wasn't because of anything they did. It wasn't their fault. It just was dependent on the city that they happened to be in, whether or not they could still serve people inside. So what keeps people from going, no, I'm going to double down, I'm going to triple down? It's faith. And so what do you radically believe in? What do you believe in even though you might not have that much evidence? And then when you fail, and here's the real secret that I see in every single one of these, is when they fail, they actually take the lessons from the failure. They don't just keep doing over and over again. Okay? So they take the lessons from the failure. That's one thing that I think a lot of people aren't willing to do. They just fail and quit, or they do what I call that is insane, which is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting a different result. Okay? Now, some of these people are actually, I would say, insane. There's no reason they should do this. After your store gets stolen, why in the world would you start another store? But I bet if you were to listen, which I have, to Sam Walton's book, his autobiography, you can hear it in his words that he wrote. Now, his family finished the book, but about 3/4 of that book is him. And you can hear the conviction. So what's your conviction? What do you believe that no one could actually change your mind? That isn't about religion. That you're like, I'm going to do this. For all you entrepreneurs, all you founders out there, you might be on your last leg. And this is just the encouragement that needs to be put in front of you. That the fear is real. You're standing there, you're looking how everything is, and you're going, I don't know if we're going to make it. But then there's something in you that's saying, but I know this is going to work. I mean, I know I might seem crazy. Am I crazy? But I know that I know that I know that I know that I know. That was Phil Knight. Obviously, he doesn't still call the company Blue Ribbon. It's called Nike. He took some lessons that he learned. It started just serving track athletes, but now it's everywhere. And I would say it's probably worn more by basketball players and just people that want to wear shoes for culture, not doing anything athletic. And they're selling clothes, not just shoes. But there were lessons learned along the way. And so what lessons do you need to learn? If you've already failed, what lessons are you going to take away? But you aren't going to give up, right? Like, that's not what you're going to do. If you're in entrepreneurship, it's because you're probably a bad employee. You don't like being told what to do, or you're constantly frustrated that you can see a better way to do it, but the boss, the person, the owner in charge isn't doing it the way that you think it could be done, and do your own thing. What lessons did you learn from your failure? Now, the other thing, and as a coach, I want to know, what are you actually afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? If I know any of the entrepreneurs out there, it's the worst that could happen was that I fail and then I start something else. Mark Cuban was asked, like, hey, what would you do if all your money went away? Like, all of it. What would you do? And you know what he said? He said, I'd be a bartender, I'd stop making tips, and then I'd just do it all over again. He would get back to where he was, or close to where he was, pretty quickly because of the lessons he's learned, both from failure and success. And many of these people say this, like, it's not that it wouldn't take long, but they could make it back. They could make it back with nothing because of the lessons that they've learned. So what are you afraid of? And if you really do have that conviction, double down on your conviction. Go all in. That's the other thing that I've seen in all of these founders, especially, I look at Howard Schultz and I go, coffee? I mean, for us right now, we're like, oh yeah, I mean, look at all the coffee shops that are there. But you got to think, at this time, 1985, it wasn't like there's coffee shops on every corner. Maybe gas stations, but there wasn't a Starbucks everywhere taking your mobile order. There were no cell phones. None of that existed. And yet he saw a world where we're going to have these espresso cafes, to the point where he's willing to talk to 200 investors. Phil Knight would travel to Japan and back and keep going, keep putting in orders. And this was a time there was no Alibaba. I couldn't just find a manufacturer. I've got to go to China. I've got to go to Japan. I got to go to these places and actually see the stuff being made. I got to meet with the people. All right. What about Elon Musk? You sell 2 or 3 tech companies. You've made hundreds of millions of dollars that you pour everything into 2 highly cash intensive businesses. And then they're weeks away from failing, but you're still making investments and you're asking your friends for money. That's conviction. That is conviction. And listen, I have seen this with smaller business owners. I've got a friend who owns a business and it was coming to a close. And he still took money out of his 401k and invested it in like coaching. 4 months later, he's paid off all of his debt. He just won an award on stage. He's put money back into his 401k. He has money saved for taxes. He was on the edge, racked with debt, owing IRS money. But look where he is now. Money in the bank. He believed that it's going to work. That's faith. And there is this crossroads between fear and faith and failure. Yeah, there's this crossroads between fear, faith, and failure. And somewhere in there's this sweet spot where as entrepreneurs, you just have to keep betting. And some of you are going to hear like, oh man, like this is just risky. It is. This is what you got into. Is it saying be irresponsible? No. But I'm telling you, I've coached a lot of founders and they all have this thing in common. When most people would say, stop, they keep going. When most people would say, it's not going to work out, all the signs are telling me this thing isn't going to work out. They go, it's going to work out. I don't know what it is, but it's going to work out. Let's just keep going. Even when the lenders are calling, when they're crazy in debt, they go, let's keep going. And I've just seen it work for them over and over again. And I think it's because our universe, our world, I'm a Christian, but I just think there's like this currency of faith that happens behind the scenes that we can't see in the spiritual realm, that there's just like, you're operating in faith. I'm going to reward you in some way or the other. And we can't say how, we can't say which, and it's not based on whether you believe in God or not. It's just, you stepped out in faith. I'm going to reward you. You believed. That's something special. There's something spiritual that happens there. And I'm not going to preach at you, but I think there's something that happens there. And so here's my request for you. For some of you, you're at that point, whether it's, hey, I really think it's time for me to go all in. I want to encourage you to go all in. And there's some of you that are going, man, I'm looking at my account, I'm looking at my stuff, and man, there ain't much left. And I would say, what's your conviction? And if the conviction is there, go all in. And this isn't financial advice by any means, but I think some of you, many of you are like on the edge. You're like right there. But the thing that's missing is just that extra ounce of faith that says, you know what, I'm going all in. Even when everything looks like it's not supposed to, I know that this is going to work. And it might not work tomorrow. It might not work in 2 weeks. It might not work in 6 months, but it's going to work. And I'm going to make it work. If I got to wait tables, if I got to do whatever to make this thing work, I'm going to make it work. And those are the entrepreneurs that win long term. Because even when they fail, it builds something in them that just can't be taken away. And it's what inspires me. It's why I coach. So I hope you got something from this. I hope you enjoyed it. Look, I'm not going to tell anyone to subscribe to my stuff because I think subscriptions need to be earned. So if you enjoyed this and you think it was worth a subscription, hit the sub button. But if you're like, this wasn't good enough, don't hit it. I want to earn your subs. And I just want to say thank you for listening. So let's go.